Hello everyone, I welcome you all to chapter 8, that is Remembering and Judging as an under the course of Basics to Psychology. Now, the two important subjects of this chapter are memory, defined as the ability to store and retrieve information over time, and cognition, defined as the processes of acquiring and using knowledge. It is useful to consider memory and cognition in the same chapter because they work together to help us interpret and understand our environments. Memory and cognition represent the two major interests of cognitive psychologists. The cognitive approach became the most important school of psychology during the 1960s. And the field of psychology has remained in large part cognitive since that time. The cognitive school was influenced in large part by the development of the electronic computer, and although the differences between computers and the human mind are vast, cognitive psychologists have used the computer as model for understanding the working of mind. Now we will begin by study of memory. Our memories allow us to relatively simple things such as remembering where we parked a car or the name of the current president of United States. But also allow us to form complex memories such as how to ride a bicycle or to write a computer program. Moreover, our memories define us as individuals. They are our experiences, our relationships, our success, and our failures. Without our memories, we would not have life. At least for some things, our memory is very good. Once we learn a face, we can recognize that face many years later. We know the lyrics of many songs by heart, and we can give definition for 10,000 of words. Now, Michelle contacted participants 17 years after they had been briefly exposed to some line drawings in a lab and found they still could identify the images significantly better than the participants who had never seen them. For some people, memory is truly amazing. Consider, for instance, the case of Kim Peek, who was the inspiration of the Academy Award winning film Rain Man. Kim Peek, and note, he was only 87 at IQ. Significantly, Lifetime, the Russian psychologist A.R. Luria has described the abilities of a man known as S, who seem to have unlimited memory. S remembers strings of hundreds of random letters for years at a time and seems, in fact, to forget anything. Never ever. So, Kim Peek is a big issue or a subject to study when we talk about memories. But what are the types and stages of memory? Now, it can be explicit memory, implicit memory, sensory memory, short-term memory, long-term memory, encoding memory, storage memory, retrieval memory. So, what is explicit memory? As we assess memory by asking a person to consciously remember things, we are measuring explicit memory. Explicit memory refers to the knowledge or experiences that can be consciously remembered. Now, episodic memory refers to the first-hand experiences that we have had. Semantic memory refers to our knowledge of facts and concepts about the world. Explicit memory is assessed using measures in which individual being tested must consciously attempt to remember information. A recall memory test is a measure of explicit memory that involves bringing from memory information that has previously been remembered. We rely on our recall memory when we take an essay test because the test requires us to generate previously remembered information. A multiple choice test is an example of a recognition memory test, a measure of the explicit memory that involves determining whether the information has been seen or learned before. Your own experiences taking tests will probably lead you to agree with the scientific research finding that recall is more difficult than recognition. Recall, such as required on essay tests, involves two steps. First, generating an answer, then determining whether it seems to be the correct one, and recognition, as on multiple choice tests, only involves determining which item from a list seems most correct. Although they involve different processes, recall and recognition memory measures tend to be correlated. Students who do better on a multiple choice exam will also by and large do better on an essay exam. A third way of measuring memory is known as relearning. Measures of relearning or savings assess how much more quickly information is processed or learned when it is studied again after it has already been learned but then forgotten. If you have taken some French course in the past, for instance, you might have forgotten most of the vocabulary you learned. But if you work on a French again, you'd learn the vocabulary much faster than the second time around. Relearning can be more sensitive measure of memory than either recall or recognition because it allows assessing memory in terms of how much or how fast rather than simply correct versus incorrect responses. Relearning also allows us to measure the memory for procedures like driving a car or playing a piano piece as well as memories for facts and figures. So this was about explicit memory. Now we'll hop on to the topic of implicit memory. While explicit memory consists of the things that we can consciously report that we know, implicit memory refers to the knowledge that we cannot consciously assess. However, implicit memory is nevertheless exceedingly important to us because it has direct effect on our behavior. Implicit memory refers to the influence of experiences on behavior even if the individual is not aware of those influences. Now, procedural memory refers to our often unexplainable knowledge of how to do things. When we walk from one place to another, speak to another person in English, dial a cell phone, or play a video game, we are using procedural memory. Procedural memory allows us to perform complex tasks even though we may not be able to explain to others how we do them. There is no way to tell someone how to ride a bicycle. A person has to learn by doing it. The idea of implicit memory helps explain how infants are able to learn. The ability to crawl, walk, and talk are procedures, and these skills are easily and efficiently developed while we are children, despite the fact that as adults, we have no conscious memory of having learned them. A second type of implicit memory is classical conditioning effects, in which we learn, often without effort or awareness, to associate neutral stimuli such as sound or light with another stimulus such as food, which creates a natural occurring response such as enjoyment or salivation. The memory for the association is demonstrated when the conditioned stimulus, the sound, begins to create the same response as the unconditioned stimulus, the food, did before the learning. Now, the final type of implicit memory is known as priming, or the changes in behavior as a result of experiences that had happened frequently or recently. Priming refers both to the activation of knowledge by representing people with words related to kindness and to influence of that activation on behavior. People who are primed with the concept of kindness may act more kindly. Now, this was about the implicit memory. But what are stages of memory? That is sensory, short term, and long term. Now, another way of understanding memory is to think about it in terms of stages that describe the length of time that information remains available to us. According to this approach, information begins in sensory memory, moves to the short-term memory, and eventually moves to the long-term memory. But not all information makes it through all three stages. Most of it is forgotten. Whether the information moves from shorter duration memory into longer duration memory or whether it is lost from memory entirely depends on how the information is attended to and processed.